Okay, so last lesson, and it's called Jassy about the comeback. We learned how to use the ultrasonic sensor for the first time. In the past, we've also dealt on how to use the light sensor, and now we're going to use the new sensor that's called the line follower. This is actually, or at least for me, was really exciting. It's a great tool to teach the MBot how to follow a certain path, and I think we're going to use it on every single program that we're going to develop from now on. So it is really important that you know how this thing works. So let's take a look. Okay, so if you haven't seen the line follower and what it looks like, it's this image right here. That's what it looks like. It has two sensors, one on each side. I think the way they work is that they detect the difference in light. Um, they send infrared or some type of signal, and depending on how it comes back and the intensity, it determines if underneath it's dark or it's not dark. um, so that's why it's also important that your path that you're making has a high contrast between the the floor and your path. The way I did it is to show a path. It's that I bought actually a piece, well, black tape, and the color of my floor it's white. So I just taped that black tape on the floor, and that was basically the path. However, the mbot also comes with a small infinite symbol that you can test your program in, and we're going to be using that for this case. But the way it works, it's also a little bit, I wouldn't say complicated, but different. I had to, well, I searched this image. I think it explains it very well. So you have your both sensors, as you can see, the one that's on your left and your right. Um, and it's going to assign these values to these possible events. If your value that's returned by your line follower sensor is 0, that means that both sensors are detecting a black line underneath it. So that means all it has to do is just keep moving forward. If, on the other hand, it returns a value of 1, that means that your left sensor it's detecting a path, but the right one it's not detecting anything. So you have to turn left slightly, nothing crazy, but just a little bit each step so the mbot can stay on path. Same thing on the other side. If the return value is 2, it's going to turn to the right because it's not detecting anything on your left. And lastly, if your line follower returns a value of 3, then we run into a problem because that means that it cannot find any path. And if it cannot find any path, I mean, we will have to define a strategy for the mbot on what to do. And in the future, we're actually going to use this value for something else. But for now, this is all you need to know, and I'm going to explain to you a little more as we start coding. But for now, let's take a look at the objectives of this program. So the objectives are very simple. The mbot needs to detect a path. It needs to follow the path and turn depending on the shape of the path. And lastly, it will do something if the value returned is 3. So, as I already explained to you, I detect the differences in light intensity between the path that you have to follow and the rest of the surface. That's why it's, once again, really important to make sure that your path and the rest of the surface have a high contrast. I think it is also possible to do it the other way around. Um, it might be possible to have a dark surface and a white path. Um, you might just need to change uh, your program to respond to the values differently. But it is possible if you want to do that. So, okay, lastly, let's take a quick look at the design. It's a little small, so let me just zoom in. Okay, so as usual, we're going to begin here. It says start, stop. Then we're going to take, well, this is not technically a decision, but it's just going to wait until your button is pressed. Once it is, that's why it only has one arrow, because nothing's going to happen if the button is not pressed. Once it does, it's going to wait 2 seconds just to make sure that you can get your hand out of the way and it doesn't start moving as your hand is still there. And then it's going to start reading the value returned from the line follower, at which point it's going to make a decision. As you remember, the only possible values are between 1 and 3, but in our program, we're going to do something called calibration to make sure that your mBot can find a path first. Um, so we're going to initialize actually the value to some crazy number just to make sure that it begins calibrating. But basically what it's going to do, if your value it's not uh, less than 3, um, it's going to turn in place to the right um, infinitely until it finds a line that might end up being very funny if you don't put it next to anything. But once your value it's less than 3, let's skip this for 1 second. We're going to enter basically another infinite loop because as you can see, all the possible outputs once from this point are going to go to A. It's a connector, it's right here, and it's basically just going to go back to this point in our program and move on, move on, move on. What it's going to do is that it's going to read the value returned from the line follower. If you remember from the table, if your value is 0, you're gonna go straight and read again, make this decision again, and react depending on the value. If it's 1, it's going to turn left. If it's 2, turn right. And if it's 3, the strategy for this program that we decided was just to make the mBot back up at the same speed so that it can return to its original path. And well, yeah, that's what all it's going to happen. I mean, if you become more experienced with the mBot, maybe later you can develop something more smart. But for now, that's all you need to know. So lastly, let's take a look real quick at the program and how you're going to code it. So once again, open your program. I think it opened the other window, but it closed it immediately. You're going to go to Edit, Arduino, and we're going to, once again, start with this block that says mBot program. Nothing is going to run unless this happens. And we're going to create a variable. We're going to call it speed. And we're going to set up this value. I mean, you could set it up to anything you want, really. You can experiment a little and to see what's too fast and what's appropriate. But for this time, we're going to set it up to 70. Now, we're going to wait until something happens. And what we're going to wait for, it's a button until you press a button. So you have to find this block that's under the robot section that says onboard button and that it's pressed. And then we're going to do something. Calibrate. So in case you just want to be reminded, right now we're at this point of the program. Actually, let me control, wait, 1 second is fine, I guess. All you have to do now is create this new block that says calibrate. It doesn't take any arguments yet, but what you have to do is create a new variable that's called line sensor value. Okay, and set it up here, this to give it a little more room, to a crazy number. It could be whatever, so gibberish, but I'm just going to keep it to 99 for now. So as you remember, the only values we can get are between 0 and 3. So this is going to start to 99. And what is going to happen is that we're going to repeat an action So in this case, we're going to repeat whatever it's underneath this block until your, there you go, value that we defined here, line sensor value, let me move this a little more, is less than 3. There you go. Once that happens, we're going to set this again to the value returned to us. Once again, if you want to interact with any sensor that's included on the mBot, it's easier just to go here to the section that says robots, and we're going to set it up to a line follower, which is right here, to line follower. Once again, if you build your mBot based on the instructions that came with it, it should be, you should have connected it on port 2. If you didn't, just make sure you set up this value to the correct value. But for now, all we have to do now is turn right, speed. So the speed is always going to be 70 because we set it up this here. Actually, in this code, we didn't use the initialize block because the variables need to be initialized at different points of the program. But right now, turn right. So that's the calibrate section right here. There you go. So if you remember, this is the part where we are right now, here at this point, basically, this shape. What happens is you're going to get the value. It starts on 99, of course. You're going to get your value, and the mBot it's going to be turning in its place, turning right until it finds a path, and then it's going to do something. So we're going to put the function, this function, right here under your section that says mBot program, and then we're going to use our control flow, this block that says forever, to perform another function called move. And what is move? So here we're going to define what's probably the most complicated part of our code. Once again, this is going to run, which is this part. Basically, what we're going to do is that we're going to set our line sensor value to, let me copy from here, line follower port 2, and once it's reading that value from the line follower sensor, we have to make a decision. So we're going to use the if then, which is here, and we're actually going to do it a bunch of times, but just to finish showing you what the it's going to do, it's going to make a comparison if something is equal to something else. In this case, if the line sensor is equal to 0, then it's going to, let me copy this one again, run forward at speed. And if you remember from the diagram, it's this section right here. And at, oh, sorry, wrong program. You're going to duplicate, paste, and then once again 2 times, but change these values to 1, 2, oh, sorry, and 3 properly. And then if you remember, if the value is 1, you have to turn left. If the value is 2, you have to turn right. And if the value is 3, we're just going to run backward. And that's going to happen infinitely. So to finish this up and check the analysis, you're going to set up the speed to 70, and you're going to wait until your button is pressed. When the button has been pressed, it's going to wait 1 second for you to move your hand from the mBot. Then it's going to run the calibrate block, which is this one, in which we set up the line sensor value to 99, which is an impossible value because the values returned by the line follower are between 0 and 3. And then once this was set up, it's going to do this until the line sensor value is less than 3. It's going to set up the value from the line follower uh, to whatever it's returning, and it's going to turn right on its place at 70 until it finds its path. Once it finds its path, this value becomes either 0, 1, 2, or 3, and then it's going to move on from this calibrate block into this infinite loop that we set up using forever. It's going to run this section forever, which says it's going to set up the line sensor value to the value returned by your line follower sensor, and then it's going to make a decision. The possible values are between 1, 2, and 0, 1, 2, and 3. If it's 0, then it's going to tell your mBot to move forward. If it's 1, it's going to tell it to turn left. If it's 2, it's going to tell it to turn right. And if it's 3, it's just going to run backward. Once again, I'd recommend you testing this program with a circuit in a infinite symbol shape that comes with your mBot. But of course, you could buy some black tape and paste it on the floor and test it on a circuit that you make yourself. But for now, once again, I'm going to skip this part now because we've done it a couple times. Just make sure you go to serial port. Right now my mBot's not connected, but make sure yours is. Turn on your mBot before you connect it to your computer, otherwise it might restart your computer since it sparks a little bit of energy once you turn it on. And then just press upload to Arduino, and next up I'll just show you a quick demonstration of what the program is supposed to look like if it's working. Okay, so like I said, the mBot now has the program loaded, and that's the circuit that comes with your mBot once you buy it from the store, online of course. And this is what it looks like. So right now the mBot's just basically on standby until you press the button, and then it's going to wait a second. So there you go. And yeah, so it's going to find its path, it's going to start going, and even if you don't notice at first, there's a light on this sensor that turns on once it's not detecting a path. So that's actually pretty cool. Yeah, if you want to try a different kind of circuit, you can build your own with some tape, as like I did. You can kind of see it in the background, but that's for another program. So yeah, just make sure it works. If it doesn't, make sure you check on the GitHub, download it, compare it to your own program, or watch the video again. So see you next time.